Good morning to you, Lydia. And how are you on this 5th day of February? Countdown, the clock is ticking away. Talk to us. Talk to us.
Yeah, management of time. I had an interesting perspective on it just very briefly. You know, you always think it's 24/7, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it can get a bit consuming, a bit difficult to look at time. And this lady was like, she's a time management expert. And she was saying, if you take that realistically and you look at the week, you've got 168 hours. And then she starts minusing how much of that is sleep, how much of that is, whatever. And then it creates a better perspective.
So you have enough time. You have all the time there is, right?
Yeah.
I
You
got
just,
you.
when you say you just need to make an hour time or, I just need an
Yeah,
hour
I
of it or
know.
2 hours a week, it's a lot more manageable.
Yeah, you have all the time there is. It's what you're doing with what you have and you're processing and managing. Yeah. Okay, we are on our second last fractal trajectory that we use to assess somebody's transformation level because we are constantly checking each other out. How's Lydia doing? Lydia looks droopy this morning. Oh, I better not crack any jokes because her face is going to crack or something. We're checking each other out all the time. You checking me out, say, oh, but you're rather perky this morning. I mean, wonder what happened to you. And so we are doing that knowingly, not unknowingly. We're very astute, or we're supposed to be quite astute so that we are in tune with each other. How often aren't we out of tune with one another? I don't read my partner doesn't read me, and boom, there's an explosion. So when we look at our category, our pointer for this morning, let's just pull that up very quickly. We're looking at some later numbers here. Number 20, a sensitivity to validation, internal versus external. What is our validation basis? How do we validate something in terms of its truth statements or its facticity? And a sensitivity to that shows where we are at in our development, because you can only see what your level of transformation affords you, right? Otherwise, you won't see it. You look at the same terrain, you won't see it until you change, until I change. All of a sudden, I see it. And you will remember yesterday's illustration about the REVs. When I went to Toyota and I was parked next to a REV, I thought it was a lot smarter looking than mom's car. But from there on out, I saw REVs all over the place. Were they there or weren't they there? Of course they were there. So you just didn't notice them. They weren't part of your saliency landscape. So let's talk about how do we exercise ourselves, our sensitivities to validation. In other words, what measuring sticks do we use to validate things? So let's go to some examples here. There's some real live examples. Um, we early in our Christian life, we normally listen to our mentors and accept everything or almost everything they say. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah.
You would
Yeah.
agree with that,
Hanging on
right?
their every word. Yeah.
Yes, because they're the gurus, man. When you started university, take me back to that day when I walked you through Wits and how intimidating it was for you. It's like, woo, where do we go now? And it was fun. I had such fun. And with Levi, the same. With Rao or UJ, same. But think of the early days when you sat before those lecturers. Oh my goodness me. And it took you a while to recover that it's okay to be in university. What's the big deal? And eventually the novelty wore off because then exams struck you and assignments hit you. And you had a reality check and you figured, oh my goodness me. And then you also figure out lecturers are lecturers are lecturers.
Mhm.
You have lecturers and lecturers. You have
Yeah.
mentors and mentors. You have teachers and you have teachers. But in the early stages, it's like you hang on their every word. Now, what happens after that? Let's talk to me. Why is it that we all of a sudden figure out, but what I heard there wasn't all of it? It was some of it, or what I heard there was nothing like what I'm hearing now. What's that about? What's that shift all about?
Yeah. Well, I was busy doing some scrapbooking and I came across my matric report. And I was devastated to a certain extent because exactly like you're talking about now, what's changed? A lot has
Yes.
changed. And thank goodness a lot has changed because even if using your varsity example, if I think of what we were thrown with, the load and the amount of information in perceivably short space of time, and you must master this content knowledge that must still also be practically used. I mean, and how I translated that, how over time you translate that into real working experience, right? Coaching, teaching in a classroom, engaging with different people. I mean, it transforms. So there already there's a change.
And that change is huge, right? Because
Yeah.
now you think of some of the things that were said. You say, but I don't buy that anymore. Yeah, but you did, because you didn't even question that. You just, the person spoke ex cathedra. Thus spoke Zarathustra. As teenagers, we used to like that. Zarathustra and Zoroastrianism. So, what changes as you grow older? You become
You
aware that
change, your experience changes.
you
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, you change. And hopefully change for the better, right? Because now you are learning to validate things for yourself, prove them to be true, show them to be true by means of your own internal processing. And that's what we don't do in schools. We don't allow kids to process stuff. It's just, I'm telling you this, swallow it, digest it, and regurgitate it. Or learn how to apply it. But there's no validation process in what am I hearing here? How am I hearing it? Why am I hearing it this way? You see, we don't teach process.
Mm.
So we don't teach our learners to be procedurally, some say procedurally disposed. We get our learners to be ideologically disposed, not procedurally. In other words, we don't major on processes and process thinking. We major on parasitic processes. I live off of what my teacher says. I live off of what the preacher says. Now, there's another one for you.
Yeah.
Are you supposed to be a passive engager in preaching? Wow, that's another discussion or couple of discussions for another day. Because we're not taught to think, even in the believing community. You can teach them anything, any set of policies for action, because that's what a doctrine is. But get them to think through it. Use it to get them to think procedurally. No matter what content you are using, whether it's scientific, biological, computer algorithms, and so on and so on, get them to think process. Because when they get to problems, they are going to be given to process thinking, not what's the answer? What's the answer? Give me the answer. Let's see if I can have an algorithm in my backpack, and let's pull one of the algorithms, because life doesn't work like that. Computers
Or
do.
what we spoke about yesterday, pre-specified,
Ah,
relevance,
there
as if
you
I'm
go.
now,
There
that's
you
also,
go. You
yeah.
got it. You got it, my dear. We pre-specify relevance. We overestimate our ability to give answers. And the moment we say, I don't know, that person goes into traction. They get a shock of their lives and say, but didn't you go to university? And boy, it should have everything about going to university, but it also has nothing to do with going to university. Because can you learn to think well, inner thinking well, and outside of a thinking well? Sometimes our thinking is so siloed, right? But one who can think well inside of a silo and outside of that silo. So I do a series of talks on thinking well in thinking wells. So I'm messing with words, but I'm doing it specifically because somebody who can think well can think inside of a paradigm and follow the reasoning, but can step outside of that same paradigm and critique that paradigm to bits and say, no, 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 no. This is ideological possession, right? Because you're calling on me to believe something that you can't verify, nor can I verify it. But I'm just working off of presuppositions, such as the earth is flat. I mean, you must see this stuff on YouTube about flat earthers and flat earth. And they will try to make out astronauts and all the people who've gone out into space idiots. And these are all lies. You know, earth is not round, it's not spherical, right? It is purely a flat circle. And then they quote the Bible on that. But you see, they are confusing scientific perceptions with ancient perceptions. That's why you have to interpret the text in the context of the ancient perception. That's why I talk about, come with me on a journey and step through my portal into my transport pod, and I'm going to take you back 2,000 years to the first century. Or I'm going to take you back 3,000 years to Genesis. Right? That's very different. I've got a new illustration today, and I haven't even used it on the air. I talk about Cammie's eye, Cammie, right? And I've got the picture, an AI-generated picture of 4 chameleons. I think Isla would love this one. 4 brightly colored chameleons. And what is characteristic of chameleon eyes? They can see 360 in different directions at one and the same time. Ooh, I wish I had eyes like that. But imagine how we would laugh at each other. Because somebody's got to squint. We're very quick. Is something wrong with your eyes, right? In Afrikaans, you skill. Because one eye is looking one way and the other eye is looking the other way. Well, you need to read the text with Cammie's eyes. What does the text say in front of you? With one eye. And the other eye needs to go all the way back to the ancient context. So reading with Cammie's eyes. I'm going to do a whole series on reading with Cammie's eyes. And people will not forget the illustration because they do not like chameleons. I love them. I used to have them walk on me, Lydia, up and down my arms. So my point is, right, we need to validate what we believe. And we need to be careful how we do it. Because if I'm taught how to process things, that stands me in good stead. That no matter where I am, I know the process. Believers can live in any situation because they know how to process reality. But I've just been given to parasitic processes and not agentic processes. Agentic processes give me agency. I can move. I go with the flow. I can do that. I can flow with the river of reality, in the river of reality. But somebody's given to parasitic processes is an addict. Think of an addict, right? They can only think one way because the chemical has overtaken their minds and their brains and their bodies. So somebody who's addicted has zero to no agency. Think of somebody who's drunk. They lose agency. Can't think straight, can't control the vehicle, etc., etc. That's parasitic processing, and it processes but it will process itself into destruction. Somebody is given to agenti processes creatively all the time to higher and higher and more creative levels and expressions of living and thinking. I can only share this with you because I've been wrestling with it for a while, and when we think of validating things, it has to do with a level of agency. Some of us don't have a cooking clue of how to tell right from wrong, justice from injustice, truth from error, fake news from real news. No perception how to do that, right? And we live in a culture that is so woke, but woke culture is a parasitic processor. There's a wonderful example. You know what wokeism is. And wokeism is about being ideologically possessed. You are possessed by a non-physical entity that rises out of a collective consciousness. No such thing as gender, my dear. It's all in your head. And yet you'll be the last person to admit that it's all in your head, because an egregore is a mind-made entity. It's not a person. It's not even a thing. It's a mind-made entity. And that's where ideologies function. That's why ideologies, in my mind, are extremely dangerous things. They will curb you because you can't think outside of the box, right? And you will destruct. Whereas if you think agentically, it increases your agency for great creativity. You're in a stage now where you're having to think outside of the box all the time because you haven't immigrated before, have you? No. This is a different ball game.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, we went overseas, but you were such a picky.
It wasn't, yeah.
And we came back. But even then, your skill set now is predicated on how you've processed across 43, 44 years. Now it's showing, because you either come unglued or you say, I have to pull this thing together. The boxes need to be out by 11 o'clock today, and let's do it, right? And so what we are talking about here, internal versus external, is, can I process, or am I purely living as an ideological captive to propositions, do's and don'ts, rules? If you can process, you can go with the flow no matter what the flow throws. The flow is throwing some crazy stuff at you, financially, emotionally, parentally, maritally. Think of all the illies in your life that you have to balance now. And I think you just say it's absolutely crazy. It's off the wall. And you have to deal with relationships, and you have to deal with emotions. And how do we get from here to there? And when we get there, then what do we? Oh, man, it is endless. But it's a test of, am I a process thinker or a terminal thinker? I've always used the word terminal for most of my life. A terminal thinker can't think out of the box. They just die because it's too much to handle. All right. So Lydia, you can see how exciting this stuff is. So we've got one more to go, and I'll pick your brain once more this side of the ocean. And then you have my permission to take your brain with you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dad. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Listen, if you can't laugh at it, then we are too serious. Oh, my goodness. Lydia, thanks for your time. It's always a joy to engage with you, and looking forward to the last episode that we will do in the future. So have a good day, Liz.
Thanks, Dad. You too.
And goodbye for now.